and it can positively affect everything in your life, from your relationships to your health and well-being, from your career path to your abundance, from the quality of your inner connection to the fullness of your self-expression. Here on the Christine Upchurch Show, we explore ways to get into that vibration of change with experts in the fields of consciousness, psychology, spirituality, health, healing, and science. Are you ready to step into your vibration of change?
Hello, everybody. Welcome. You might be listening live on Facebook Live on my professional page, perhaps on transformationtalkradio.com, on KKNW here in the Seattle area, AM 1150, or you might be listening after the fact on one of the dozens of podcasts it sends up, or on my YouTube channel, because we're getting these videos up onto YouTube now. But wherever and whenever you're joining us from today, it is going to be an incredibly important conversation. Oh, my goodness. I hope you tune in. I hope you stay for the whole show because it's important. And I want to say hello to the people behind the technology first. Hello, Jacob at TTR. Hey there.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And hello to Mr. Benny Mathers at KKNW.
Hello, Christine. My hug extends further to you.
Hugs back. I certainly miss the days where we're like looking at each other across that long counter with you behind all that equipment. But you know, I get to hear your voice anyway, so that's always nice.
Yeah, of course.
And see your face on Facebook.
Oh yeah, we love it.
Well, you know, this live show today is on the eve of the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and I tell you, you know, whether you have the perspective, live radio.
I'll get it.
Usually it's a cat. So today it's a spam call on my landline.
The cat's figured out how to use their phone. Like, what's going on here?
Well, apparently the universe is underscoring that what I'm about to say is really important.
Yes.
Okay. So the eve of 9/11, the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and when you look back at what happened on 9/11, whether you believe it was external terrorism, you know, attacking the United States, or an inside job, and we're not here to debate that today. We've had other shows about that. Regardless of that, it demonstrated for us the depth of the darkness on our planet, the depth of the shadow within the collective. And we're going to be talking about a shadow, what's going on right now. And I tell you that although you may not understand this at this point, some of you probably do, this shadow is far darker than the one that got displayed on 9/11. And I'm really excited about my guest today because she's this amazing woman. She is an engineer, a medical award-winning inventor, rejuvenator, Eastern medicine physician, an international award-winning artist, and a former submarine designer. Oh my goodness. You know, she's got this amazing background. She's known globally as a pioneering expert in the science behind the healing effects of color, light therapy, and energy medicine. She validated the science of light therapy for the masses and medical community, and for almost 2 decades has been teaching doctors and lay people around the world how to heal at the root of their disease and illness using color, light, sunlight, flow states, and quantum healing energies. She's been praised by the medical community as a visionary inventor in healthcare and honored with multiple medical awards for her science-based teachings and clinically proven rejuvenator, which I am a user of just about every day, which involves quantum light therapy. She's got a passion for helping people deal with their health issues, the root of their health issues, and also offering us insight into anti-aging, which I absolutely love. And anyway, I won't go into more detail. You can learn more about her. We'll give her website later. But I'd like to welcome our amazing guest and my friend, Leanne Venier. Hey, Leanne.
Hey, Chris. Great to be here once again. Always fun chatting with you.
You know, in the past, we have talked about light therapy, and we've done a couple of amazing shows on that. And you can find that, you know, all you have to do is Google our two names and you'll find your way to that, or use DuckDuckGo, because, you know, you'll,
yeah.
It's good to get in the habit of using that.
You actually, yeah. find results these days about healing.
And you and I spend, much of our days these days researching information and staying apprised and in tune with what is underway right now. First of all, from your perspective, do you agree that we are in a time of a very dark collective shadow?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a lot that's now coming to the surface. A lot of things that have been suppressed and repressed for literally decades, if not even longer than that. So there's a lot that's coming to the surface. The good side is that when you bring things to the light, then they can be resolved and healed. So it's going to be a challenging time, but it's ultimately going to be an amazing time when we come through this. But it's very important to be aware of what's actually going on so that you can be prepared, both emotionally, physically, psychologically, mentally, from an energy perspective, all of that. So
yeah. And it's funny because with 9/11, the darkness was there for us to see in one fell swoop, and it made it obvious to everybody. Mm-hmm. But you and I have talked a lot about how our current situation is more akin to putting the frog into cool water and then heating it up. And we're getting to a little beneath the boiling point. And there's so many of us so many proverbial frogs mm-hmm. who don't know enough to hop out. They don't know that the water is almost boiling. Right. Why do you think that's occurring? That people are oblivious to some of what's going on?
Well, part of it is when you introduce things gradually and you try to make these big controlling measures over large populations, you can do it at a gradual pace, and people don't really realize what's happening because their rights and their civil liberties and all of that are being stripped away gradually, one at a time. And they're manipulating people by using their shadow aspects to get them to comply. So they're playing to those shadow sides, which are the repressed, the things that we repress in ourselves that we don't want to see about ourselves. So we push them down and we don't allow them to come to the surface. And they can come to the surface through these psychological manipulations, but we often will project our shadow onto other people. So we can get into specifics, but so basically people are being played. They're being played very cleverly, and it's a long game.
So it's kind of like the collective shadow is getting bigger in a sense because it is playing off the individual shadow. Correct?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because, we all feed into, the collective unconscious. What we experience as individuals broadcast, literally, we're like radio signals. We are putting out this energy that we have, and then other people are picking that up. That's why you'll see certain areas where people are much more frenetic about things. And then other areas where people are all laid back. It's like, what's the big deal? It's like, I'm going on living my life, but other areas like Austin in particular, where there's like a lot of people that have just bought into what's going on, hook, line, and sinker, and to their detriment. And you can feel the energy there. So the collective in local areas, but then it spreads. But conversely, we have a large group of people that are on the opposite end of the spectrum. So it's not like it's all that side, but yeah, so.
Yeah. And and I've told this story before, so I won't get into it. But for me, initially, when the supposed health issue was coming up, and I'm not denying that there's anything that exists, so please don't change the station or give me nasty emails. But when the health issue first arose, I listened to the epidemiological model. Former research statistician, I've got some respect, not knowing that the person who was presenting this model had been wrong by thousands of percentage points for over and over again. And it took a situation where I was in fear, and I realized that I shouldn't be in fear, that it broke my fear. So it's kind of like breaking a fever. It was like suddenly, boom, my fear was gone. And this was probably a month, 6 weeks into this awareness of what was going on. And all of a sudden I started looking at things differently. I looked at what was being presented in the news. I looked at the way people were behaving. And it's like, once I stepped away from that fear, I was no longer hooked in.
Right.
So, I think that we need to have awareness, we need to have concern, but we have to be able to navigate in a way where we don't allow fear to be the GPS. How do we do that?
Well, first of all, people are able to be manipulated through fear when they are presented with, this is going to happen to you if you don't do this, or if whatever thing, and this is broad reaching. It's not just one thing, like 9/11, for example, it's like, if we don't, get aggressive and go against, go and find these people, then you're going to have more terrorist attacks. You're never going to be able to fly because you will never be safe again. So we have multiple of these things that have come throughout history, and today's the anniversary almost of 9/11. So that it's very easy to manipulate people and control people when they're in a state of fear. Your video just went away. I don't know why, but okay, there you are. You're back again.
Yeah, sorry.
So it's much easier to control people when they're in a state of fear, because they're in that reptilian brain, as we call it, that fight or flight mode. You can't think clearly or logically when you are in this frenetic mode. So in this particular case, people are being told, and in so many cases, it's like, you're going to die, you're going to be in danger, your family is not going to be able to do this, you will not be able to do these things. But ultimately, the thing that is terrifying people right now, the people that are buying into, the mainstream media storyline, are that they're going to die. They're going to die, and they're going to die a terrible, agonizing death from something which we know for a fact is very innocuous for the vast majority of people, but they're being manipulated in this way to keep them in a fear state, and they keep drip feeding more stuff. Because what happens, people will plateau. They'll get like, oh my God, I'm so scared, I'm so scared. So, and then they get kind of saturated with that. So then they become almost resilient to that same fear-mongering tactic. So then they have to step it up. Now we have to introduce a new variant. We have to have something else that's going to be a new threat. And then people get all agitated again, where people take off the oxygen blockers temporarily, and they're like, oh, thank God, we're almost like through this. And it's like, oh, no, we're not done yet, because now we've got this new threat. So you are going to die from this new threat. And who's to blame? The people so it's like trying to create this hostility and manipulate people, and then also get people to fight with each other, because you keep them distracted through all of this infighting, as opposed to giving them the opportunity to calm down, get out of fight or flight, where then they can start seeing, like you with your, where you got this devastating message, because Western medicine will tell you, oh my God, you just got a death sentence. And then you're like, so you can't think clearly. But as soon as you can step away from that fear and you're no longer able to be manipulated by it, then you can go, wait a minute, I actually have a lot more power in this situation than they want me to realize, which is exactly the situation here, because we all have complete power and control over our bodies, our energy bodies, and our health. We don't have to be afraid of anything. And this is where, we see reversing illness, chronic illness, disease, all kinds of things that people have been told, well, this is a death sentence and you're going to have to take this pill for the rest of your life. And then we're going to do some surgeries, and then you're ultimately going to die in about 10 years. But in the meantime, we're going to make you, manage this by, here, pop this pill, pop these pills, and it increases and increases. So, go ahead.
And I just want to add that you're talking about how the fear disrupts the logical, rational thinking. It also disrupts the intuitive flow. It's like if we have messages coming through, the fear kind of like blocks them. It doesn't allow us to get the intuitive direction, so that if there are things we're supposed to avoid or things we're supposed to partake in for the benefit of our health and well-being, that information can't get through the same way if the fear is there. It's like this vibrational blockage of the flow.
it's like a force field, but a bad force field, blocking out all good things, as opposed to like keeping good energy and blocking out bad things, which you can also do. So the fear does have a vibration to it also. And then you're projecting that onto other people, and you're just like, and it's this increasing agitation that people then tune in with.
Yeah. Okay. So it's, the fear triggers an energetic response. It triggers choices. How does that relate to the individual shadow?
Okay, so the shadow again is aspects of ourselves that we don't want to see. They may get, and it can be across the spectrum, but things that are typically repressed, that are, we're taught by society and by our parents. Don't be aggressive. Don't be strong, forthright, that sort of thing. Many people, I mean, in our society, especially women, don't be sexual beings. Don't be too ambitious. There are a number of things that we're kind of like told those are bad traits to have. So some people fully, they take those in, and then those aspects of themselves that are all part of us, that are natural parts of ourselves, get repressed because they've been, punished or disciplined or told that's a bad thing, or repeatedly told by their teachers or their parents or somebody, in early childhood or throughout their lives. They're like, only, do things that are to help everybody else, kind of thing. Where then, so instead of like, don't look out for yourself, look out for other people. And where it's like, we're supposed to look out for ourselves. That's the most important thing. You have to look out for yourself, because you can't help anybody else if you don't look out for yourself and take care of yourself. And this is true whether people have children or whoever. So,
and it triggers this desire to suppress those shadow sides of ourselves, those places that we don't want people to see. And the way we do it is by being a good girl or a good boy, wanting the approval of the authority figures, the teachers, the parents, and at this point it's the employers, the government, the medical system, so-called experts. And then we want the approval of our community, because God forbid, they should see that we're not falling into line as a part of the tribe.
Right. Yeah. And that tribal part is a very strong manipulator as well, because, historically we literally lived in tribes. So being ostracized from the tribe can be extremely painful for people. So there are a lot of us who are outliers that are kind of like, I do great on my own. I'm like, but I actually try to not follow the crowd and the tribe. So that's historically, and you're the same way. It's like, we don't follow the crowd, but there are a lot of people that do, they feel like if they get ostracized from a group or their family or whoever it might be, whatever organization or their co-workers or people in their church or whatever, if they are ostracized or made to feel ostracized, they will do anything, like bend over backwards, to get back in those good graces. So this is another way that people are being manipulated. So you manipulate the group, and then that group manipulates everybody else that's not complying. So it's again, very cleverly done, and it's all using this psychological, aspect.
It's interesting because there's been some scientific research that indicates that when we feel ostracized, it triggers the same part of the brain as physical pain. So it's the sort of thing where it feels really off, because it's triggering our brain, saying there's something, like when you think about physical pain, it's the brain saying, hey, stop doing that with your body there, because this is endangering your survival. Like putting your hand on a hot stove or whatever. Well, if it's triggering, that ostracism is triggering the same part of the brain, then that means like, okay, we need to stop doing what we're doing, because, I could be ostracized and that threatens my survival.
Yeah. Well, and this was, early on when people were being told to wear these oxygen blockers, as I call them, and they didn't want to, but people would go automatically just start going. You go into a store and you put on your oxygen blocker because it says so on the sign, and people were just so afraid to just take it off, because it's like, these people that I don't even know, that don't know me at all, might give me a dirty look, you know, and it's so strong a manipulator. And it was just mind-boggling to me, the level of this, you know, that people were complying, doing things that they absolutely said, I really don't want to be doing this. It's like, well, don't do it then. But it's so painful to them to be even thinking that, oh my God, somebody might give me a dirty look if I'm not wearing my oxygen blocker.
And it gets to be more extreme than the dirty looks. It you know, people get kicked out of stores. It's, you know, I live in a state where they've taken that, you know, the CO2 builder is, let's say, the opposite of it. I mean, that's sort of like the oxygen blocker, the CO2 builder, you know, that's not good for us.
CO2 being a noxious substance, not a good, right. Yeah.
Right. That people have taken that very seriously, and despite all the evidence, and there's so much of it, you know, I've looked at the studies, you know, as a former research statistician, I was the one who told doctors, no, you can't do the study that way, or you can't analyze it that way because that's not legitimate. This is the way a good study is done. So I've looked at the research, and there are plenty of doctors and researchers who've looked at it too. Yeah. And you know, it's not there. And yet people think that they are protecting their communities by doing this. And there's, you know, you want to get through the grocery store, you want to be able to buy your food. So it's like, you gotta pick your battles. So anyway,
what I was gonna, with response to that though, where you say that people think they're protecting their communities, that's one of those shadow aspects. So some people legitimately do think they're protecting others. Other people, and so the way that you know when you're being controlled and manipulated by your shadow is you get angry, you get incensed, you get outraged about things. So when people are saying, oh my God, you are so selfish because you're not wearing an oxygen blocker, you're not thinking of other people, you're being selfish and all of that, those are projections of the shadow of that individual onto other people. So it's a part of themselves. It's like they're wearing their oxygen blocker because they're not thinking about grandma, they're thinking about it's protecting me, because ultimately I care about protecting myself. But they don't feel comfortable with that because they've been told, you know, look out for other people. You get a good pat on the back. You know, this is good Johnny or good Sally for being, you know, thinking of others. So they're controlled by that, and they get angry and incensed. So if there's no emotion with it and somebody's like, I'm just wearing it because I'm just trying to be part of the tribe, that's a different thing. But if they're doing it and they're getting angry at other people, that's a clear sign that they're being manipulated by their shadow, and it's something in themselves that they don't want to see. They do not want to acknowledge the fact that I'm really looking out for number one, but I'm wearing this as a badge of honor to say, oh, good for me, you know, I'm so altruistic and I care about other people. So when they're in that state, when they're in that shadow state, coming out and being projected on others, and they're getting angry and they're getting outraged and incensed, and this is where you see on, you know, Facebook and other social media platforms where they will just like go into attack mode, you know, and get so angry. Clear sign that they're operating from their shadow. And they cannot think rationally when they're in that state. So you can present them all the science and all the evidence that you want until you're blue in the face. They cannot process it because they're in that fear, fight or flight, shadow manipulated state, where they're just like, nope, I'm being a good girl. I'm being a good girl. You're being selfish, and I hate you because you are a terrible person. So, and then they blast that out to everybody else. So again, this is an opportunity for people to like, okay, where's this coming from?
And I think that there's some that sort of fall in between the, you know, the neutrality, like, oh, they're choosing to do something different than I am, and the really like the big trigger, you know, of sort of the shadow. Those people who just want to put enough blinders on to not look at that other stuff. They're just going to trust the authority figures.
Right.
And it's and so they therefore think that for the greater good, that we need to all get into lockstep and do certain things, including, you know, the oxygen blockers. So, and it, with those people, I'm kind of confused sometimes because I think they're neutral enough to be able to process some of the information, but they often choose not to. It's kind of like they want to believe something and not have that belief system challenged.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and that's, because people are, they're kind of happy being in their comfort zone. And comfort zone doesn't mean that it's comfortable, because sometimes people, like a good example, somebody's raised in an abusive family and they have an abusive, father, and then they end up marrying an abusive husband. That's their comfort zone because that's what's familiar to them. It doesn't mean it's healthy, but they're just like, this is what normal is for me. So I'm in my comfort zone by being in an abusive relationship. So being in an abusive relationship with your government is the same kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, they're oppressing me and they're taking away all of my rights, but they're in control and I don't have to think for myself that way. So again, giving away that power, because people don't realize they have as much power as they really do. And again, this comes from decades of social conditioning. It's not something that just happens, because we used to encourage people to be forthright and speak up for themselves and that sort of thing and defend their beliefs. But now it's like, people used to go on strike all the time to say, hey, this is not okay. You are oppressing me and you are taking away my rights. And they would go on strike and they would fight back. And then the employer would go, oh, okay, I guess we will do something and put safety equipment on this machinery so we don't have people falling in the machine and getting eaten up by the machine. It's going to cost us a bunch of money, but we'll do it because you're fighting back and you're making us do it. So this is where people as individuals may not have as much power as they do when they band together. So that's where you band together with others and you are invincible then.
Mm-hmm. And yet the problem is we've got two factions, essentially, pretty significant divisiveness, where there's one group that thinks that one type of action or a whole lot of different types of controlled actions, including the thing that goes into the arm, that is really caring about humanity. And then there's a whole other group that's basically saying, wait a minute, here are all the trails of the patents, and this is how detrimental this can be, and here are the side effects, and this is it's like
and you've got all the hundreds of thousands of people that are dying.
Yeah. So one of the things that I find that's so concerning is that people don't process things rationally. It's kind of like, oh, I know somebody who got really sick, or I got really sick, or I know somebody who died. Therefore, we need to control everybody else.
Died from cocoa or died from
died from the illness.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore we need to fix it by controlling what everybody else does, because that's the only way for us to be safe. And I'm like, I know that's completely illogical based on what the deep dive I've done and what lots of people say. And then on the other hand, there are those who are awake to the toxicity, that like what's in these things, and how detrimental some of these things, these whether it's we're talking about staying away from others, or wearing that thing, or getting this, that there's all this potential detriment, including long-term freedom. And it gets really much darker than this, and it's all out there, for people to see. And so there are those who are saying, no, if we're going to save humanity, we need to, fight against the powers that be. So there's this great chasm between the two camps, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. And again, the shadow is a huge role player in all of this, because until people can bring those shadow aspects to light, and as Carl Jung, the Jungian psychologist, that invented Jungian psychology after his name, Carl Jung, he talks about individuation, where in order to become fully integrated human beings, we have to allow these dark aspects that we don't want to see to come up and come to the light, because then they can be integrated. And it's not that big a deal, because people have been conditioned, oh my God, this is a terrible thing. You know, again, whether it's, you know, sexual or societal or behaving a certain way, or, you know, these things that have been repressed for so long. And people, you know, anytime you're spending all that energy to keep that thing down, it's like trying to keep a lid on something that's, you know, a pressure cooker that doesn't, you're holding in the pressure, and you're like using all that energy to hold this thing in, which is exhausting. So when people have, you know, like these fantasies about things, whether it's sexual fantasies or fantasies about, I want to beat up that person, or I want to like go and punch my boss in the face, or whatever the fantasy is, that's the shadow trying to come to the surface. And you're like, but I can't think about that because that's bad. That's a moral bad thing. So you project that onto other people. But all that energy that you're expending by trying to hold in that stuff that you don't want to look at is making you like literally sick. And it's blocking that free flow of energy. So people can't get, not only they can't be healthy mentally, psychologically, but they actually end up having a lot of physical illness that, you know, it's like, I don't understand why I've got all these problems. It's like your body is trying to bring these shadow aspects and use your body to tell you you're blocking the free flow of energy here, wherever it is that's connected with whatever the shadow aspect is. And you are making yourself sick. So I'm using your physical body to bring this to your attention so you can actually look at it. I'm inviting you to look at it, take a look, you know, and things that come out through dreams. So, but until people do that, address their own shadow aspects and allow these things to come to light, they're acting as part of the collective, like the, you know, the hive mind, you know, the Borg kind of thing. They're being, and it's so easy for oppressive governments to control people when they are not individuated, when they have not fully integrated as human beings. It's much easier to manipulate them, and they know that. So how do you do that? You keep them in a state of fear all the time. There's always something.
Well, and let's talk for a minute about the psychological versus spiritual aspects of individuation, because I think that there are plenty of people in the consciousness realm who think that they need to jump, you know, beyond this concept of the psyche, the psychological processing of shadow, and just go directly to unity. Like, okay, so we are all one, and therefore we need to do what's good for the collective. And they're not processing or even aware that there's this collective shadow, and it's almost like the dark forces, so to speak. We're truly in a spiritual war. The dark forces are saying, if you care about the oneness on a spiritual level, that we are all one as humanity, then you will do and be controlled in this way. And it's just like, so it's actually the consciousness, the desire for spiritual consciousness is being used as a weapon for control.
Yeah, and it's obviously the polar opposite of reality, because I often use the analogy when people, you know, because there's so many people, they want to take care of everybody else. And this people that get into healing arts are often this way, and they want to take care of everybody else. And here I'm taking care of you. Mothers that are, you know, doting mothers often are like this. They take care of everybody in the family. And it's like, I have to take care of little Johnny and take Susie, you know, and to bring them to all their appointments and take care of them and feed the whole family and make sure everybody's taken care of and make the lunches. And they never focus on taking care of themselves. So then the day comes, they get sick. And they're like, you know, they have the flu, you know, like we used to have the regular old flu, which is still around, and gets labeled as cocoa these days. So then they're like, kind of, because they're so depleted and so exhausted from putting all their energy out there and never having any downtime, never looking and taking care of themselves. Then they're like wiped out and they're in bed. And then everybody's like, Mom, get out of bed. What's the problem? You know, like, and nobody is there to take care of them because they've conditioned them to think, okay, well, I'm the one that takes care of everybody and you don't have to ever take care of me. So ultimately, and this is from an Eastern medicine 5 elements perspective, where you, people will often, again, this is like projecting the shadow onto others. I want to take care of everybody else, but really my secret desire is that somebody then takes care of me. And they don't realize that they're the ones who have to take care of themselves. They're the only ones who can take care of themselves. We are all the only ones who can take care of ourselves. So the analogy that I use is when you're on a plane, you know, when we used to be able to fly freely, and they would always tell you, you know, if there's any turbulence or anything, or the plane's going to crash, you take that oxygen mask that comes from the sky and you put it on yourself first. You don't go and help your children or your spouse or whoever you are with. You take that oxygen mask and you put it on yourself first. And then you can help the other people, because you're going to pass out if you don't put the oxygen mask on yourself first. So you have to take care of yourself first in order to be around to take care of others. So this is the same thing, you know, on the bigger scale. We have to look at taking care of ourselves. We have to make sure that we are staying healthy. Putting on an oxygen blocker is definitively bad for your health. I mean, we could have a whole show about that. I mean, there is absolutely no question. It's like drinking your urine or eating your own feces, because it's waste in the gaseous form that are meant to be expelled from the body, not reconsumed. You're not supposed to go in your toilet and drink your urine and eat your poop. That's stuff that's supposed to go away. Just like expelling your gaseous waste is supposed to go away. It's
right.
one of the ways that we expel toxins from our system. So
and one of the things that a study showed with children is that expelled waste gets concentrated on the outside of the mask. Now,
also,
just go into a place where people are wearing masks and look at how many times they're touching the front of their masks and then touching other things. It's a great way to spread it around.
Oxygen blockers.
I said that.
We're trying to not say certain words so we don't get
totally. Yeah.
platforms.
So anyway, okay. It's the kind of thing where you know, we have to be willing to question some of these things as opposed to just being in lockstep. And you know, I watched something earlier today that was incredibly disturbing, that this is information that's out there for people to access on the internet. And there's so much about this whole big process that has been out there. And it's really dark. You know, they're talking about camps. They're talking about taking over people's homes. They're talking about checkpoints. I don't think that people realize how incredibly dark this is getting, and it's all there in plain sight.
Well, the people in our country in particular, and other first world countries that haven't lived through a Holocaust, for example, it's like the frog in the boiling water. They don't realize what's happening because it's happening in gradual increments. But I can tell you, anybody who's from, you know, Eastern Europe that lived through the Holocaust, Poland, you know, Russia, Germany, anybody that has lived through this kind of thing in the past, they've seen this coming for months. I mean, as have many of us who are awake and who have studied history. So, but you think that, well, that can't happen here. That can't happen here because we have rights. We have, you know, these civil liberties. We have these things. Yeah, but you're like every day you're giving away more and more of them, and they're gradual. And if you look back a year ago when people were saying, it's just an oxygen blocker, what's your problem? Wear it. You know, it's like it's for the greater good. It's just an oxygen blocker. And back then I was saying, yeah, right now it's an oxygen blocker to condition you to be ready for when it's just a thing in your arm, you know, and then it's like for the greater good. So all of this, and then it's like, and people are like, oh yeah, but then we do the thing in the arm, and then we're good. Then we go back to our freedoms. No, then you have boosters. So
and pills, twice a day pills, twice a day pills.
Yeah,
and
it all comes in gradually. So you get people to comply because you're like, if you do this, then you'll get this carrot. And then they're like, okay, I'll do that. And then they're like, wait a minute, I only got the carrot for like a week. And now you're telling me no more carrot until I do this other thing. So the carrot just keeps getting pulled along. That's how you get a horse to, you know, keep walking in its cart. So it's literally like the reason it's like, it's a carrot on a stick. Here, come on, follow me.
But there are plenty of people who are saying, well, I've been a good girl or good boy. I've done what I've been told by the authorities is good for the collective. Therefore, I'll be safe. Therefore, I won't have my finances controlled. I'll be able to work. And it's like, if people actually did a deeper dive into what the next thing is going to be, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, they would realize that there is no good girl or good boy, that it's always going to be about control, and it's getting really, really dark.
Right. So do you see directly how that ties in with the shadow? Because they're kind of like, okay, I did my thing. Now I've got my green paper, and I can go into restaurants. I took care of myself. So I can I have my freedoms back, and you don't. So you suck. Right. And I got my thing. And they think that by them complying, it's like, this is good for everybody. But really it's like, this is what I think is good for me. And then they realize, but now you have to do this, and now you have to do that other thing, and you have to do all of these other things. So it just becomes, and again, like, look at it from, the shadow perspective, because they are thinking of, like, me. I want to take care of myself. I want to be able to go to these coffee shops and restaurants, bars and things like that. And I don't want to have to wear an oxygen blocker. But wait a minute, now you tell me that there's a new variant that came out, and I have to wear an oxygen blocker again. Oh man. And I got the thing in my arm, and I did all of those things, and now, but okay, all right, I'll do it again. And then they just keep, carrot, you're horsey, keep coming, keep doing what we do.
And by the way, we can eliminate cash. We can eliminate credit cards. It can all be done within the context of your body. And therefore, there's always the potential to be controlled. And this sounds like, the conspiracy kind of thing. But when you look into it and you see how far we've come in such a short period of time, the last year and a half, it's on its way. And the question becomes, how do we wake people up, people who think they're woke? How do we wake people up to process their shadow?
Well, again, part of it is like getting out of that, like you experienced. I have to get out of this fear-mongering state, first of all.
Right.
So the way that I work with a large community of people, tens of thousands of people all around the globe, and medical doctors that to understand we have full control over our physical bodies and our energy bodies. You can get sick or you can not get sick, but you can completely heal from literally anything. We've been conditioned to think and believe that, nope, you've got this illness. You're basically dead man, dead woman walking, but we're going to help you along, or we're going to give you these very toxic treatments to help you, and which then spiral you downwards further, long enough to just like need to buy a lot of pills. So when people realize that they have full control over their health and their healing process, there's no way you can control people through fear, because it's ultimately people are afraid of dying. They're afraid of dying. They're afraid of suffering. And that's how you manipulate them, by, creating these like devastating images, like, oh my God, you're going to be in a hospital bed and you're going to like have all these tubes coming out of you, and then you're going to die. Right. So the biggest thing is like educating people. It's like, you have full control over your physical body and your energy body. So and we do. And this is what so many people don't understand. They don't understand that they have this power within themselves.
So I think that there's a whole other level of fear coming up for people who have been reluctant. And that is that, it's actually out there that there will be military involved in controlling us in a variety of ways. How do we step through that fear to embrace our authentic voice, to our soul-led guidance, if we're going to avoid if we want to avoid some of the control, the physical control?
Well, first of all the stuff that's happening now, none of it is legal. It's all unconstitutional, what's happening in every country. So you're starting to see a lot more people start to band together. I just watched a video yesterday of a group in the UK that went in and took over a library. And individual citizens, and this is like, we are under common law, we have the right to come over and take over this building because it's a public building. And they did. And they actually, the police were called because the manager of the library called them, and they were having a party in there at the time, renting it out for like a group of people. And it's like, this is a public building and we're supposed to be able to use it for our own, like reading books kind of thing, not for having parties in here. And so they actually spent the time and talked very calmly. Again, when you're not operating in shadow state or state of fear, you can be very logical, very rational, very calm, very centered, very focused. They actually educated the police officers that you don't have any rights to do what you're doing. You have been lied to, and this is the truth. And so at the beginning of the thing, they actually got the names and badge numbers of the police officers and saw their identification and said, you are now personally liable, not just as a police officer, but as a human being. You are now liable to take this. If you don't take this information and take it to your supervisors, we can sue you personally for your responsibility in propagating this mythology and this, thing that is oppressing we people, human beings, men and women that are not, we are not buying into this whole mythology that's been created for so many decades. So this is where people need to band together. And this is the same thing. If you have a company, that I have, one of my customers is works for a hospital. She's a nurse. The nurses and the medical staff, they started seeing, like, the hospital said, okay, everybody has to get the thing in the arm, or you're going to get fired. So a bunch of people started quitting. It's like, I'm not getting that thing in my arm. I do not want it. The other people that are like, okay, well, I don't want to quit my job. So how many of us are there that don't want to get this thing in the arm? And it turned out there were hundreds, several hundred. So they started having meetings together. And then other hospitals started joining in. People are like, oh yeah, we want to join these meetings. We don't want to get that thing in our arm either. So then the hospital, because so many people had already left, they actually sent out a letter that, because they had told them that there's not going to be any kind of exemption that we're going to accept. You have to get the thing in the arm or we're going to fire you. So the hospital actually sent out a letter to all of the people that had already resigned. And they said, look, we're now going to let you do whatever kind of exemption you want, and just come back and we will just pretend that you never resigned in the first place, so they don't lose any of their benefits or anything like that, because they're so desperate. Because so when you're hearing that hospitals are like at capacity, it's true, because they have so few people, doctors and nurses. Do we need to take a break? Oh, because you're nodding. Okay.
No, I've got two cats who just entered the room. A little distracted.
Oh, okay, because I'm like, something's happening. Okay, I saw your energy got distracted. Okay, so anyway, so they're so short staffed that they literally have to close down whole sections of the hospital because they don't have the faculty, the people to take care of those beds and those patients. So they are getting full of people that have gotten this thing in their arm. That's what's flooding the hospitals, but they're losing their staff, nurses and doctors, and all across the board. So anyway, the point being that they have now banded together. They've gotten several hospitals. This is in the state of New York. They're fighting back, and they've already been reversing all of these mandates to make people, it's like, if you want to keep your job, you have to get the thing in their arm. Now they're saying, okay, we've changed our mind, because guess what? Hospitals are a money-making operation. They are not an altruistic, good for humanity kind of thing. They are in it for making money, just like the pharmaceutical industry. All of it is a profit-driven industry. If you don't have any people to work for you to be able to bring those patients in and take care of them, their money is like, no money for you,
Right,
so that's how you fight back. Before it ever gets to a point where you've got like an oppressive, government and military that's now like doing check, which they're, in Australia, they're already well on their way.
Oh, it's just so disturbing.
Ground zero.
And one of the shadows that I think we desperately need to deal with in order to prevent things from getting even more out of hand. And it's really disturbing to hear about how, there are many researchers out there, many doctors out there say there is early treatment. There are ways to heal this, and there are people who have needlessly died. But one of the shadow sides is this tribalism of us versus them. I saw this great cartoon, and you see, it looks like it's probably in medieval times, and you see this king out on this balcony looking down at this crowd, and he's got an advisor standing next to him, and looking down this crowd, and you see the pitchforks and the flames, the torches, and the advisor turns to the king and says, "You don't need to fight them. All you need to do is convince the torch people that the pitchfork people want to take their torches away."
Right.
And so
I posted that.
Yeah, I did too.
I'm the one that posted it. Yeah, it's a great one. Yeah. So because all you have to do is ensure that people are fighting amongst themselves. You don't have to do any kind of control measures. You get them to think that these people are against them and these people are against them, and then they fight with each other, and then you can do whatever you want.
Right. And in the Nazi death camps, they had Jews who were, serving the Nazis. Basically, Yeah, anyway.
Because again, they thought they were I'm protecting myself. I'm taking care of myself. So I'm going to deliver my countrymen to, basically to the slaughter, thinking that it's going to take care of me. And then, of course, then they get led to the slaughter as well. Yeah.
Before we go any further, because we're running out of time, I want to make sure our viewers and listeners know about how they can connect with you. And also, you're offering a freebie, and I want you to get an opportunity to talk about it because we've only got a couple minutes left.
Yes, so I'm going to do a free Q&A, a Zoom meeting for up to 100 people. If you go to my bio on the description for the show page, wherever that link is.
It's transformationtalkradio.com. We'll also put it on the Facebook Live page.
Okay.
And also when we post the YouTube video, we'll post it under there too.
Yeah, and it'll be not this coming Thursday, but the Thursday after that, whatever that day is. And so people will be able to ask me any questions about personal healing and about how to protect themselves against all this stuff that's going on right now, as well as, things that are off-gassing from people and that sort of thing. So how to keep your energy body strong and all of that. So I'll be doing like a live interactive Q&A. So not me pontificating to a camera, but where people are listening, but where people can actually participate in the conversation. Whether they want to be on camera or not, it doesn't really matter, but then people can ask questions. And then that recording, so that will be for anybody that wants to get more information about how do I keep myself strong and healthy, and how do I, keep, resist against what's going on.
Right. And I'm going to be doing an Instagram Live, Facebook Live coming up about how I've got evidence that if you change your frequency, you can mitigate some of the external noise, the vibrational frequencies that are disturbing to our energy field. And I know that, Leanne, you're going to talk about that as well within the context of that Zoom meeting. So it's really important. And yes, scientists have shown that the healing process, yes, it's a biochemical process, but it doesn't start in the body. It starts beyond the edges of the body.
Exactly.
So the energy field is where it's at.
Exactly. Well, and one of the things that people are so concerned about in the midst of all this is 5, I don't know if I can say this.
Yeah, no, don't say it. Don't say it.
Yeah, okay. So the 5 thing, with cell phones and et cetera. We've had technological advances that have gone through, and we've been exposed to higher and higher frequencies of things, and we adapt our energy bodies to be able to assimilate and, withstand. It's like energy body immunity. So this is just another thing. So people are getting all caught up about that. Again, another fear-mongering thing, but it literally does affect you.
It does.
You can raise your vibration so you are not affected by it. So you raise your energy body immunity. Anyway, so everything is doable. Everything, you don't have to be afraid of anything, whether it's technology or whether it's an oppressive government or, of course you don't want to let your rights be taken away from you gradually. No frog in the boiling water.
And I just want to end this saying that we are sovereign spiritual beings in human form, and it is time for us to step into that warrior energy and bring that light further into the world. And I know that that's what you're doing, and I know that we've got to go because the show is ending. But Leanne, thank you so much for joining us here today and for having this conversation. It's an important one today.
Yeah, and hopefully a lot of people will take this and share it with their friends and family members, because this is big picture stuff. And when you understand what's going on from a big picture view, you can understand things at a micro view as well, and have all of these levels at the same time. So wonderful being here. Thank you, Christine.
Great. And thank you, viewers and listeners. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
All clear.